Before we start the program, we'd like to share a couple housekeeping items. First, this program is being recorded, and registrants will receive a link to the program recording. Second, the audience has joined this webinar in listen-only mode. You can submit your text questions via the questions pane in the webinar control panel at any time, and we'll address as many as we can at the end of today's session. Welcome to Rewiring Your Brain for Stress Resilience, brought to you by the American Bar Association's Law Student Division, Young Lawyers Division, and Commission on Lawyer Assistance Programs. ABA membership is free for law students. The Law Student Division offers premium benefits, which includes access and savings for Quimby.com, discounts on bar review programs, up to $50 off West academic casebooks, and a legal ethics bundle that includes a free model rules of professional conduct ebook. Law students can upgrade to premium for only $25. The Young Lawyers Division is the ABA's home for the new attorney, giving members tools to navigate the early years of a career, opportunities to network, and resources to grow your skill sets. ABA lawyer members under the age of 36 or in practice 5 years or less, and law student members are automatically enrolled in the Young Lawyers Division for free. The ABA's Commission on Lawyer Assistance Programs has a mission to assure that every judge, lawyer, and law student has access to support and assistance when confronting substance use disorders or mental health issues. This mission is carried out by supporting the work of state and local assistance programs as they provide hands-on services and support to those in need of their assistance. Visit our website for resources geared at law students, such as articles, toolkits, podcasts, and more. Now we're going to hand things off to Alessandra Fritz to get us started. Alessandra?
Hi, I'm Alessandra Fritz. I go to the University of California's Irvine School of Law. I'm really excited to join everyone here today. Thank you so much for listening in and watching. I am the ABA Law Student Division Mental Health Coordinator and liaison to the Commission on Lawyer Assistance Programs. I've been working on a lot of great initiatives, and I'm super happy to be working with great people like Jennifer Riggs here with us today. Jennifer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer. I am a former lawyer, and so I've done law school. I've passed 2 bar exams, but now I am a practicing certified neuroscience coach.
Great. Well, we're really excited for you to speak with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm absolutely excited. I feel so passionate about this topic. Thank you for the brief intro. And before we get into where we're headed, I'm gonna go over where we're going. So give you a roadmap, because one thing I know is that the brain is always trying to predict what's happening next. So let's throw the brain a bone. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about the problem of stress in the law. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story, both as a student and a lawyer. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the neuroscience. So we're going to talk about how the brain changes and then how the brain responds to stress. Then, of course, what can we do about that? What strategies are there? I'm going to share with you my main strategy, #1 module of my framework that I use with clients. And then I'm actually going to take you through a short exercise so you can try it for yourself. And then I want to leave you with a few tips for keeping your brain healthy. So that's where we're headed. And we do have a few polls I want to mention that I'd be interested to know, first of all, sort of who's on this call today, who's on the webinar. Share with us what stage you're at in the legal profession. Are you a student, a professor, law school admin, or how long have you been practicing? By the way, the questions in these polls are anonymous. But if you could take a second to answer that, we could get an idea of who is on the call. Oh, great. Okay. Excellent. So we have a good mix. We've got no real brand new lawyers though, 0 to 3 years, but maybe they'll watch the replay. Okay, and then before I talk about the problem of stress in the law, the second question I have for you, if we could put up the second poll, is on average, how would you rate your stress level? So 1 is the lowest and 5 is the highest.
Our first response was a 5, but it looks like it's changing a little bit now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your honesty, everyone. Again, anonymous. Let's be honest. Okay. Yeah, 33%, lots of 5s there. I hear you. I hear you. And then we've got some even spread among the lower ones. Interesting. Okay. Then we'll have a couple of other questions for you, but we'll get there as we're talking about the problem of stress and the law. So, I think there are a lot of factors that go into this issue. I want to share with you 3 that stand out for me that kind of work together. One is that lawyers and law students tend to be smart. They also tend to be problem fixers. Right? Problem solvers. You're solving problems in law school, and then of course your clients are hiring you to solve their problems. So you're fixers. The third point is that the legal profession is a competitive field, right? So whether the competition is with your fellow classmates for the top rankings of your class, or for those big law firm jobs, or whether you are practicing law and you're competing for that partnership or the clients, or of course case outcomes, right? And all of this, I think, is sort of like almost a perfect storm for creating this idea that we all have to be super lawyers, right? Like these superhero, smart problem solver fixers, and that we can't have any problems or vulnerabilities of our own, because if we do, then we were just going to fall to the bottom of the barrel and get spit out, right? And so, however, most of us know that this is not reality. And we know now with the report on the ABA report on lawyer well-being that kind of the cat's out of the bag. Okay, lawyers are not superheroes. They are human beings with brains and nervous systems. They get stress, they have problems, and it affects them. So, before I want to share with you my story, and maybe as I share with you my story, we could bring up the next 2 questions in the poll. How often do you talk about stress with people at your school or work? And then following that, after you do that, the next question is, how likely are you to ask for help?
I'm not allowed to vote in these polls, but I would be somewhere between often and all the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, well, that's good.
But I'm also good. Like, this is kind of my thing, my issue, so.
Okay, yeah, there you go, exactly. It wasn't mine at the time, and I never talked about it. So this is, yeah, okay, rarely 71%. That's what I would expect, actually, sometimes 29%. So, and then you can put up the next question. While you're answering that, my story is, so, I worked hard to get to law school, like all of you did, and it is a competitive place. I was there among lots of other smart people. I studied hard. I always did the work. I always was prepared, but I still sometimes failed. And I just want to, the Socratic method, I don't know if they still use that as much as when I was in law school, but it kind of freaked me out. And I want to share with you an example. I remember, so yeah, sorry, I'm pausing here because I just want to note, yep, so 25% unlikely to ask for help, 75% somewhat likely. Okay, thank you all for answering those. So what happened, I look at this photo of the chairs and the desks in the law school classroom, and it almost really takes me right back to this moment. It was in con law class, and the professor called on me, a la Socratic method, and I just froze. I had a complete brain fog. I couldn't remember the case, what I'd read about the case, and I certainly couldn't put any thoughts together to answer her question. And so I didn't know, of course, at the time what was happening in my brain. I know now, and I'm going to share that with you. But all I remember is, there was like a hush over the room. You could have heard a pin drop. And I had to say, I'm sorry, I read the case, but I have to pass. And it was like, ooh, people never did that. And then there was the embarrassment of that made the stress worse. Okay, fast forward to when I was practicing, then I got even more stressed when I was practicing. For me, it was that I felt there was so much that was beyond my control, whether it was the court docket, the clients that I was assigned, the facts of the client's case, who was the attorney on the other side, all of this stuff. And yet I really felt responsible. Like if I were smart enough and a good enough lawyer, I should be able to fix these problems. I should be able to solve the client's case. And of course, that wasn't always true. And it was something that I didn't want to talk about either, because no one else was talking about it. I was stressed and didn't know what to do about it, and felt like I was the only one. I felt like there was something wrong with me. And unfortunately, it led to some chronic stress that then began to affect my health. And most of us probably know at this point that stress can affect your mental health. It can, you're at high risk for depression and anxiety, that it can affect your physical health, including, put you at risk for cardiovascular disease and immune disorders. But what you might not know is that, and what I didn't know back then, but I'm so passionate about now, is how stress affects your brain. It affects it in two ways. It affects your cognitive abilities, and it affects your ability to control your emotional responses, what I call self-regulation. And those are both pretty important in the law. Unfortunately, I hope this will change, but unfortunately, the law school doesn't teach you how to handle the pressures of the practice. And so without a proactive strategy, without understanding what stress does and how you can respond to it differently, students and lawyers end up, feeling that they just have to push forward, keep it to themselves, and it affects their thinking and performance. But, again, lawyers are human beings, and their brains and nervous systems are affected by stress like everyone else's. So, my real sincere hope is that law students and lawyers will stop internalizing their stress like I did, and know that they can do something about it, which you can. So I'll get off my soapbox now, and let's move into some brain facts. We'll start with a really hopeful brain fact, and that is that our brains have something called neuroplasticity. This is the ability of our brains to make new neural connections throughout our lives. This is how we rewire the brains. We do it by focusing our attention and taking new action. You know, it used to be that people thought when you got to a certain age as an adult that your brains were static, that was it. And we know for sure now that that's not true, that you can create new neural connections and rewire your brains. So I like to give the metaphor to clients of a path in the woods. So if you were to walk along this path every day for 30 years, it would look like this, right? It would become well worn, and you could probably do it with your eyes closed. But you could wake up one day and decide to create a new path. Now, it would take more energy, focus, and attention, and effort, and more action, right, to clear the path. But you could choose to do that. And the more you followed that second path, that too would become well worn. So it's like that as well in our brains. You know, and in my practice with one-on-one clients and work with groups, I teach people about their brains, and then through coaching and asking them questions and giving them some actions to take, that's how you rewire the brain. And because ultimately a brain that is has greater neural connections among its parts is a brain that is better integrated and a higher functioning brain. Also, a result of that is greater well-being. So let's get to second brain fact that can be a little depressing, but we need to know it. We need to know it so we can work with it. Knowledge is power. So, all right, this is how stress affects the brain. Two parts of the brain to keep in mind are the amygdala, you can see that there in the red, and then the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is part of the limbic system in the brain, which is in the sort of midbrain there, and it's one of the older part of the brains in terms of how we've evolved. And it's where you know, our emotions come from. And the main goal of the limbic brain and the amygdala really is to keep us safe, right? Keep us alive, right? Keep us running from danger. But the amygdala is also very sensitive to hormones and neurochemicals that get released, and I'll get to that in a minute. And it's not a place of nuanced thinking. Now, the prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is what I call like our brain's CEO. So this is the area, it's on the part of the outer layer of the brain, the cortex, and was developed later in terms of our evolution. The prefrontal cortex is really right behind the forehead. And it's involved in integrating different parts and systems in the brain, and it also helps to it helps us with our executive functioning, so regulating our attention, our behavior, and helps us with memory. It's also critical to decision making, goal direction, impulse control, and also self-awareness, understanding of self and understanding of others. So obviously this is where you want to be accessing this part of the brain, right, when you're studying and practicing law. But what happens when we feel pressure and stress, which is sort of like the modern day you know, running from the lion, the response in the brain is similar to that of a physical threat. And so the alarm bells go off, and we produce hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, and chemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine that together activate the amygdala, and at the same time inhibit our access to the prefrontal cortex. So the result of that is foggy thinking, memory problems. You know, again, what happened to me in con law class, that's what happened. I froze, I couldn't think. Also poor decision making, poor impulse control, inability to understand others, And then also difficulty controlling one's attention, and there's a reactivity as well. So not the greatest place for law students and lawyers to be operating from. I want to add in here a really interesting study that I just read about yesterday, and I thought, oh, I have to share this on the webinar because it seems it really applies, I think, to the legal profession, and in particular in law schools. There's so much competition, right, with peers. And so there was a study done with students at Caltech, which is a highly competitive school. And what they did was they put these smart, competitive students in small groups of, I think, about 5 people. And they asked them to take an IQ test. Fine, they took the IQ test, they went home, they were told to come back in a few weeks. They came back in a few weeks and they had to take an IQ test again. But this time, before taking the IQ test, they were given their rankings from the prior IQ test within that small group. And everyone was kind of freaked out by that. And we know this because their brains were scanned at the time of the second taking of the test. And what they found was that at the beginning of the second test, everyone's scores dropped. And as well, the amygdala area was highly activated. Now, for some of the students, they were able to pull it together and get back into the prefrontal cortex as shown by the brain scans. And those that did were able to improve their IQ scores as the test went on. So the good news with that is that some people were able to connect back to the prefrontal cortex. And that's the goal, right? It's not that we should never feel stress. It's not that we just need to walk around, not being affected by anything, but rather it's how quickly and ably you can respond. So you don't get stuck in that amygdala and limbic area, so you can get back to your prefrontal cortex. Because again, that goal is to build the neural pathways to that. And we know we can because our brains have neuroplasticity. All right, so what do we do? How do we do this? Before we get there, I want to quickly share with you a couple what I call unstrategies, because they're not helpful, but they're common. Okay, unstrategy number 1, panic. Panic. Like, this is when you get stressed about the fact that you're stressed. And now that you know about what happens in the brain, I can see that happening. Like, oh no, now forget it, I'm a goner, right? Obviously, that's not helpful. It is going to increase the stress level and the inhibit that prefrontal cortex even more. So, and an important and helpful fact here with this is to remember that some level of stress is good for you, right? Not all stress is bad. So stress can be a motivator. Stress can keep you alert and engaged, and there's all kinds of studies on that. So stress is not in and of itself a bad thing, right? It's when it gets to a high level or we don't recover and it becomes chronic. Okay, so the second unstrategy, suppression. I think this is the most common, suppression or denial. I think it's really common for a couple of reasons. For me, that was my MO, because one, I didn't know what else to do, so I'm just gonna shoo it away, and two, because lawyers and law students are busy. You've got a lot to do, right? So who has time to deal with the fact that you're stressed? Let's just move on and tick off the boxes and get everything done, and then my stress will just go away, right? But the problem with that is that when you do nothing about it, then the level of stress can mount. If you don't stop, slow down, try to address it, and you just keep pushing forward, it can mount. And so the other thing is, the reason why I chose this photo for the slide is that what it can do when the stress mounts and we're not dealing with it is it can lead to some unhealthy coping mechanisms. right? So it could be food. Like this guy, I don't know, maybe he just had a stressful interaction with a client, but he's not mindfully eating that donut. He's just like, oh my God, right? And it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, and it was not surprising to me at all that the ABA report on lawyer well-being cited a significant problem of substance abuse in the legal profession. So it makes sense. Okay, all right, let's get out of the bad news and let's get to some good news. Okay, how do we do this? How do we get back to the prefrontal cortex? How do we rewire? Well, the number one answer is awareness. So it's simple. It's simple, it's free, it's available to you at any moment. It's called awareness. What I mean by that is focus and attention in the present moment. So remember that focus and attention is how you rewire the brain. And this being aware of oneself internally, of your thoughts and your feelings, as well as physical sensations, comes from the prefrontal cortex. So it does require us to pause in a moment and become aware. Now, I want to say right now that what some of you might be thinking is like, I don't have time to pause. Forget the pause. And my response to you is to ask yourself, do you want it done quickly or do you want it done well? Do you want to be doing this and thinking about this from the limbic area, from the amygdala, or do you want to be using all of that prefrontal cortex that you have available to you, right? And oftentimes when you slow down, then you're actually going to be more efficient. So this awareness is the most critical step, the first module of my coaching framework, and it's the doorway to the brain's CEO, and it's how we can change that automatic stress response. So, how do we know this? You don't have to just believe me. You can do your own research, but there's been all kinds of studies on it. And I want to share with you a couple of studies out of Harvard. These studies were done on the brains of people who were mindfulness meditators. So, mindfulness is another way of saying awareness in the present moment. And these studies found that those who meditated actually had increased gray matter in the area of the prefrontal cortex. So they actually had healthier prefrontal cortexes. And then secondly, another study found that people were shown these emotionally reactive photos. And after 8 weeks of training in mindfulness, when they were shown those emotionally reactive photos again, that there was a decreased activation in the amygdala. So, what I want to say about this is you might be thinking, oh no, does this mean I have to start meditating? Does this mean I need to go to a meditation class? I don't have, I don't have time for that. And I also want to share with you that the first time I tried to meditate as a practicing lawyer, I just felt like my head was going to explode. So I get that. But now I meditate regularly. There were a number of steps that I had to take to get there before I could sit and practice that. What I want to say is it's not a prerequisite. So it's really about how practicing this in the moment. Having said that, if you were to have a regular mindfulness meditation practice, you absolutely would support your ability to get back to the prefrontal cortex more quickly, right? It would happen more quickly for you. It would be easier. So that is the step. Now, how do we do it? What I tell my clients, I break this awareness down to something I call the 3 A's. the 3 A's of awareness. So it's the awareness that we just talked about, and then it's articulation. So putting your thoughts and feelings of the present moment into words, and that clarifies it for the brain. The brain wants to know what it's dealing with, and putting it to words helps to clarify. In addition, there was a really interesting study from UCL that showed that people who articulated their negative emotions, so put those emotions into words, showed a decreased activation in the amygdala and increased activation in the prefrontal cortex. The third A here, acceptance, can be the hardest one for people to get. What I mean by acceptance is not accepting a situation that's unacceptable or external circumstances, but literally accepting what you are thinking and feeling in that moment. So instead of batting it away or judging yourself for having those thoughts or feelings, you're like a neutral observer of what is there. So you're just allowing it in that moment. So those are the 3 A's, and we're going to go through a process in just a minute. But first I want to share with you that there's 2 ways to do it. So one is bottom up, and by that I mean really from the body to the brain. And the second is a brain to the body. The bottom up one is kind of always available to you, right? And that is just paying attention to your body, to your physical sensations, as well as the breath. And the breath, there's been some interesting neuroscience studies on that, really does affect the brain. It can help with your cognition as well as help calm the brain. So in a moment when nothing else is available to you, that is like just feeling what you're feeling and tuning in to the breath, increasing and slowing the breath can be helpful. The greater the inhales, the better the cognitive functioning. The greater the exhales, that will help to calm the brain. But they should be inhales through the nose. They did find that. Top down is when you can shift a mindset, shift your thoughts about something. Like maybe those students at Caltech decided, oh, I got to get over this. It really doesn't matter where I stand in court, with everyone else. I'm really gonna, I'm gonna take this challenge on and I'm gonna do my best. And then they got back to the prefrontal cortex that way. So that one's not always available to you in a moment, but it's a great one, and you don't have to do the bottom up first. You can change your mindset in a way that connects to your prefrontal cortex. There are a number of mindsets in particular that help you do that, and I'll suggest one to you in a minute as we do the exercise. So, okay, are we ready to give this a shot? So the first thing, we're going to practice this, and the first thing I want you to do is actually think of a situation right now that is causing you stress. Now, don't go with like the lifelong hugest thing, but something that feels not totally overwhelming, but that you can deal with right now. So, in terms of rewiring the brain, it's helpful to start small, and then increase over time. So take something that feels manageable, but bring that to mind right now. And then what I'd like you to do is actually close your eyes or have a soft focus gaze onto the floor in front of you. But we want to sort of shut out the external stimulation for the brain, and bringing the connection to internal, bringing the focus to internal. And as you think about this situation, notice your thoughts and feelings on this situation. And even actually, if you were to give yourself, like rank the level of stress that you're feeling right now about this, just to yourself, give it a number on a scale of 1 to 10. What's the stress level right now? Just noticing that. And again, back to those thoughts and feelings and actually articulating them to yourself. What are the thoughts? What are the feelings? Putting them into words. And then notice if, as you do that, you want to just kind of swat them away, or if you're judging them or judging yourself. And instead, just for this moment, allowing whatever it is you're thinking and feeling. And then beginning to become aware of the physical sensations right now. So any areas of tension that you feel in the body, notice that. And see if just by noticing if you can relax it a little bit, maybe it's the jaw or the shoulders. Another common area is the belly. That can be tense. And see if you can relax it and then slow and deepen your breath. So taking a few big inhales and exhales. And now I want to ask a couple of questions. What in this situation can you control? Just noticing what is within your control. And then, is there a different perspective or mindset that you could have about this situation? I'm going to offer one to you, and that is, what really matters in this situation? You could think of yourself a year from now, looking back on the situation, and how do you want to remember the situation? How do you want to remember yourself for having handled it? So what's really important to you about it? And then, is there an action that you can take? So when we're stressed, the brain does like to do something about it. What action can you take? And then just bringing yourself back to your present awareness, your physical sensations, your thoughts, your feelings. And now ask yourself, what's the level of your stress about this situation right now? And you can open your eyes and just notice if you feel any different. And a few things I want to say about that practice. First of all, if your number didn't go down, don't worry. It's not, you didn't fail, okay? There's no failing in awareness. I mean, honestly, just the effort and the intention may be where it begins. Remember, we're building the pathways, and at first it's not going to be like a natural thing. Maybe it was for some of you, and that would be great. But and some of you perhaps didn't get past just the noticing or noticing the physical sensations or changing the breath. That's okay too, because you're still helping your brain. And again, so starting with small steps is a way to do it, and it gets easier. And it doesn't mean that you have to go, sit in your law school classroom and do this 5-minute exercise. That's not realistic, right? But you can always check in with your body and deepen your breath. And then you can come back later to perhaps a top-down awareness of the situation and shifting a mindset. Or some people may be able to shift right away, shift a mindset that works. So, okay, I promised you I'd give you some brain tips. So let's get to that real quickly. The ways to support your brain in this endeavor for stress resilience and neuroplasticity. I like to say rinse, recover, repeat. So if you've had an extremely stressful situation or week or something, allow yourself time and a place to recover. So whether that's, going out with your friends or taking a nice hot bath, maybe it's going to the gym, but, pay attention to it and allow yourself to sort of reset and then get back to ground zero and start again. The other thing I want to say is self-care is brain care. So we all know that sleep, diet, and exercise are good for your body. Well, research shows they're good for your brain. So 7 to 9 hours of sleep on average is what the experts say. The diet, and by that, I mean, like, oh gosh, when I was in law school, it was Taco Bell and Mountain Dew, but to the extent that you can eat whole foods and stay away from highly processed foods, foods that are high in sugar additives, also, lots of alcohol intake, it's not good for the brain. Exercise helps support neuroplasticity. So if you can get to the gym or whatever exercise work that you enjoy is what you should do, because you're more likely to do it. Finally, support. Actually having someone to talk to, feeling that you can connect with someone and talk to this is really important and does actually support your brain. It makes you feel in a place where you're safe and you're not going to get to that amygdala area so quickly. So, whether it's someone in your own community, and you feel free to reach out to me as well. I hope that you all will feel that like you've got some information, you can start talking about this issue a bit more. And I want to invite you too, that if you go to my website and blog and sign up to receive my blog, and then shoot me a quick email that just says ABA webinar. On Monday, I will pick one person, maybe two, it depends on the numbers, to give a free coaching session too. So, and I would love to do that. So please, get onto the blog and email me. And with that, I think I'll hand it back over to, is it Alessandra who's going to field any questions? Hi.
Hi, I'm back. Yes, so if anyone has any questions, you should see a chat tab on your webinar thing. If you let that drop down, you can send your question to organizers and panelists, or to everyone if you want, and I will make sure that Jennifer is aware of the question. In the meantime, I just want to thank you again so much for speaking with us today. I was a participant in a similar webinar in June, and again, I very much appreciated the exercise in thinking about a specific thing that's stressful and then changing your perspective about it. And it's very helpful. I'm going to a actual seminar, like an in-person thing, later today at a law firm to learn about data security and and I've been a little stressed out about it because all of these things, and it's helpful for me to go. It's like I'm actually just going to learn about this topic because I'm externing at a place where they want some help learning about it, and so it was helpful to just reframe the way that I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
And I very much appreciate it.
Did you was there a difference in your number before and after?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had my first number was like a 6, and then it dropped to somewhere 2 or 3. So.
Oh, great.
All right, so it looks like we have a question.
All right. Yeah, shoot.
How long does it take to rewire your brain?
Oh, that's a common question. Good one. Good one. And unfortunately, kind of like the law, there's no black and white answer. So there's been, you know, research done on this. I think the best study is out of University College London that sort of said that the average time would be about 66 days. But there are a lot of factors that go into that. So including, right, like one's level of stress, and whether they're taking care of themselves, right, like according to these brain tips and things like that. And also sort of how much of a change, like how big of a change that one is trying to make. So there are a lot of different factors that come into play. It could be as short as a couple of weeks. It could be a lot longer. But again, I just say start. And it does get easier.
All right, we have another question. What is your opinion on the impacts of prescriptions like SSRI and SNRIs?
Okay, so not being a psychiatrist, I don't feel qualified to answer that question. What I will say is that that there's absolutely a link between stress and depression and mental illness, anxiety and depression, for which one might be taking medication. So it's, you know, if you're taking medication and then you can also practice this, then you're coming at it from you know, two angles, and that can only help. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Makes perfect sense. You know, there's always a lot of factors that go into well-being, and I think it's important to pay attention to every way that you can make your life less stressful. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, and we're really very appreciative to you for speaking with us today about one very interesting approach within the neuroscience approach.
Yeah, and the one thing I really love about this approach is it's within your control, right? You're not a victim when you're able to do this and to kind of take back, you know, take back your brain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you have all a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week. And thank you again, Jennifer, for teaching us about neuroscience.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.